And the broadcast is live. Phil Tarrant, Tom Panos, Real Estate Exposed, rounding out 2021, the last show of the year. We're in your hands, our viewers, dialing in across social media platforms on the handle, the great man at Tom Panos. Go and check it out. We're on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're all over the joint. Welcome to the final show of the year. Real Estate Exposed has been a great privilege spending an hour every single week with Tom Panos since this lockdown monarchy hit us in June. So we've done lots of shows, Tom. We haven't missed a week, mate. It's something about continuity with this sort of stuff, isn't it?
Look, I tell real estate agents, Phil, like I often get people saying to me, the Sunday night rant, we've been doing this for nearly 2 years. The Sunday rant, been doing it for 6-7 years, right? I think if you're serious about being a content creator and using digital media as part of your strategy in business, what you want to do is do something without fail every week. Yeah. Just like the news, just like the 4:00 footy game on a Sunday on Channel 9, right? Because what happens is it becomes predictable, it becomes repeatable, and people expect it. It's the stop-start that actually gets people off track. So I think, Phil, that even if your schedule's busy, even if you don't feel like doing it, even if you're unwell, you should make every effort possible. And Phil, for me, we're very fortunate that with the Sunday night rant, the couple of times that I've had chemo over the years where I haven't been able to do it, we use a function called Premiere, which allows you to actually put on something, and to the users, they think it's live because it comes with the same live stream effect. But I think if you're someone that's a user of live streaming, you can pick up that it's not live. But yeah, I urge every person, mortgage broker, real estate agent, maybe 2022, turn around and say, hey, I'm going to create a bit of content every week. I'm going to give the marketplace a view of what's happening in my life and how what's happening in my life affects their life. So, of course, you can't just sit there and talk about, hey, I went to gymnastics today and I had lunch at Catalano's. You want to sit there and say, hey, this is what's happening in the marketplace. This is what it means. This is what I've been doing in the marketplace. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great way to, keep in touch with your database of 1,000 people with half an hour of content.
Yeah, I completely agree. Continuity is essential. And another great Tom Panos, trust him. Was it give? What was it? Punch, jab, or give?
Jab. Hook, plagiarized from Gary Vaynerchuk, but my version of that is give before you ask to take.
And content, streaming or otherwise, is a great way to give. It builds a lot of trust and loyalty and predictability, helps you build a relationship en masse and at scale through investing only one part of your time. And to be fair, Tom, we've kept the whole period through this lockdown, and we're both pretty busy guys, but it's in our calendar. We schedule it. Sometimes it might move a half hour here or there, depending on what's going on. But we can get it done, and everyone can do that, mate. So I hope everyone's been enjoying Real Estate Exposed. The basis of this show was to go behind what's really happening in real estate and probably having the discussions that everyone talks about or wants to talk about, but there's a little bit of fear around it. So this being the last show, Tom, we spoke about this, telegraphed it last time we got together. We're in the hands of our viewers right now. We will answer anything, or Tom will answer anything about real estate that you want to ask or you've wanted to ask through 2021. This is the Dolly Doctor, Tom, of real estate. Ask us the questions that you want our insights and interpretation of, and no doubt Thomas Panos will give you a very real and practical answer. Mine will be cagey and guarded because I don't really know too much about what I'm talking about, Tom, but let's get into it. I'm going to start off, mate. Tom Panos. Market predictions for 2022 from Tom Panos. What's next year going to look like?
And I love people to throw their predictions in as well, Phil. In the comments, put down what you think will happen. And for the record, Phil, I actually think if you're a real estate agent, you should have an opinion. And I know that a lot of people say, oh, no one can predict the market. But hey, listen, if you work, let's say you work Milson's Point, right? You work Milson's Point area. You list and sell in Milson's Point. You speak to buyers. You speak to your database. You can forecast what people are saying for next year. You have got as good a pulse on the market in Milson's Point as what anyone else does, right? So you should be able to ring up your client base and say, hey, listen, here's what I think is happening based on these things. So I think a professional does form you don't have a monopoly on the truth, but you've got a far better view than the guy that's working on the Dodgem cars at Luna Park, right? I'll tell you that much. The guy working the Dodgems at Luna Park will not have a good a view in Milson's Point real estate as what you will, right? So I think you should have a view. So last night, Phil, Rod Point, 6 o'clock auction, reserve 3.8 million. I want to tell people the address as well. 3.8 million. This is on a Tuesday night in a marketplace that some people are saying it's on life support. 35 Newell Avenue at a reserve of 3.8 million, and it sold for $4,550,000, right? And that to me is not a sign of a market that's on life support. That to me is a sign of a market that if you've got quality property, there's still a lot of buyers on it. That's the first thing. The second thing, Phil, I would say is my personal view is this. I'm putting it out there on tape, being recorded. You can go back and say, Panos got this one wrong. I think that we've got an oversupply of listings at the moment. I think there's been a softening of prices because there's far too many properties on at the one time. They should have been on the market in August and September, but people waited till the lockdown ended in October. So you ended up having 5 months supply of listing all over a couple of months, November, December. We come back, January, February, we're going to have a far more balanced market. In addition to that, we've got a federal election. Liberals in power, and even though Liberal government doesn't control APRA, they are appointed by Josh Frydenberg. It doesn't take you to be Einstein to work out the Liberal government is going to do everything possible to have people in the right sentiment to vote for Liberals to go back in. They're not going to want people having a property crash. So I can turn around and say property crash is probably highly unlikely. So then that turns around and says, what are the other two options? A stable marketplace or a marketplace that just takes off again? My view is that it's probably going to be closer to the stable side than the takeoff. I still believe and I still think, Phil, that regional Australia is got a lot of energy. And the reason why is that I am running into daily executives, professional knowledge workers who have made the shift to regional Australia, and companies are becoming very, very, very clear. You will not be working back 5 days full time in the office. So that's becoming clear. So I think regional Australia should do well. I think that the unit market is going to be the one I'm predicting to take off. Units will take off. And the reason I say that, Phil, is that they have had a major correction. They've been sluggish. Students and the kind of people that were renting apartments disappeared. They've started to come back. Universities have already got their curriculum set up for face-to-face learning. They've already factored in students will be in the room. I can say this firsthand. I've got university professor, Dr. Steve Georgiakis at University of Sydney, and he's told me they're back in. It's back in. Students are coming back in. These students live in units, right? So we got this influx of university students coming back into the country. So I think units are going to actually go up in value. And the rental market has already shown signs of coming back They're my predictions, Phil. I'd love to hear yours.
Well, they're good predictions, and quite a bit to unpack there, Tom. And again, put your comments in what you think your predictions for 2022, and any questions you have for myself and Tom as we round out 2021 on Real Estate Exposed. Unpacking what you've said, let's start with apartment market and my view of apartment markets. I think they will come back. There's still quite a lot of things that still need to happen in terms of accelerating that. I think the apartment market has been very good buying over 2021. I know some people who have been picking up apartments. It just hasn't had there's been essentially a tale of two cities or tale of two assets in growth. I think REIA came out just this week, Tom, and their collective number for Australia for 2021 in terms of growth was 23 to 24%, maybe 23.8%. Can't remember the number exactly, but that's for detached dwellings. The unit sector it moved, but it was lackluster in comparison to housing. So been very good buying in apartments over 2021. And I think that's going to continue at least for the first 6 months of 2022 out until the end of the financial year. I can't see apartments taking off that quickly. But the big question mark for me around the apartment market, Tom, now is, yes, I subscribe to your thesis around students living in apartments. And I know the universities are itching to get students back into university campuses and the associated economies around it. But are they going to be in the CBDs is the big question mark for me. I think the unit markets in your outer lying, more affordable areas outside of your traditional CBDs will be the ones that probably go first around these clusters. And you think about apartments around satellite universities here in Sydney, for example, out in the western suburbs of Sydney, like Westmead, for example, where you have both big sort of medical fraternity and industry there and also university sector. I think apartments in those markets will be the first to fire before your big CBD high rises. And if I was in the market for apartments right now, I wouldn't be buying large scale block stuff, 1 in 400 apartments. I'd still be looking at, and I think for real estate agents advising their vendors, if they're selling these sort of assets, the smaller block stuff, 4, 6, 10 apartments, strata or otherwise, I think they're the apartments that'll fire first, and they're probably going to be the best value for money. I think it's going to take at least until the end of 2022 to start seeing your capital city CBDs markets fire. And I have on good account from some very senior people inside of government. They have concerns about the CBDs, Toms, in Australia. We'll speak to the rural and regional market that you commented on beforehand. They don't think it's ever going to go back to where it was. The CBDs are challenged. They're very challenged. Number one, we don't have the students in there sort of filling it up and shopping, etc. Number two, it's a ghost town in CBDs on Mondays and Fridays these days, particularly Fridays. Fridays used to be the day. Everyone would come in, go and have something for lunch, and then get on the grog in the afternoon and drink some schooners or have a nice glass of wine. Mate, that's largely gone. And I don't know if it's ever going to go back to where that is. So, if you think about that those economies connected in with the CBD market and the workforce, capital city workforce, and you're talking again the knowledge economy, mate, big concerns there because if everyone used to be in 5 days a week and now they're in 3 days a week, you've ripped out a big percentage of commerce coming into the CBDs. And you only need to think back to some of the infrastructure spend that's been going into the CBDs, planning for the future. Australia in 2030, 2040, we just spent a few $1 billion on getting some light rail in here from build out of a Spanish firm. Here it's taken a lot longer than they expected. It was over budget. Mate, 10 years' time, are they going to rip those rails up and go, no one's using this stuff? It's it's unnecessary infrastructure. We're better off spending that money out in regional and rural Australia. And I think that's going to be a real key thrust moving into 2022 and beyond. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of the rhetoric coming out of the political parties around better support for regional and rural infrastructure. And this is all connected in with where and how people work, which is therefore all connected in the real estate that people are transacting. So that's my view on the apartment market. On the rural and regional Australia, absolutely subscribe to what you said, Tom. Knowledge workers, which is essentially the new parlance for white collar workers. So those people who use the internet and a computer for the business of doing their jobs or phones or whatever else it is, you will see I think we've only just started seeing this flight to regional and rural Australia. It is now embedded into the DNA of how Australians will live and buy property moving forward. It's just the beginning. If you accelerate that, fast forward that 10, 20 years, these are going to be the areas within Australia where you're going to see the biggest growth in terms of local and state economies and where Australians choose to live. I would preface that, though, with not all regional and rural areas are the same. And to your point, we're on the record here at the end of 2021, and we'll go back to 2022 and see this. But I think the markets within rural and regional Australia, whatever your definition of that is, needs to be within striking distance of the CBDs. It needs to be easy to get to the CBDs, wherever it is, whether it's New South Wales or Queensland or down in Victoria or anywhere. These knowledge workers are still going to need to be in the office a couple of days a week, or at least be accessible to go into the office. If you're 3-4 hours away, that's a long way, and that's hard work. If you're within striking distance, and I would say striking distance is, an hour to 2 hours away, where you can manage it. And by striking distance, really good freeway infrastructure. You don't want to be in traffic lights. You don't want any of that sort of stuff. Really good rail infrastructure, so people can work on trains if they are making that commute. I think now, Tom, people, they want utility of their time. The idea of spending 2 hours a day, an hour to work, an hour on the way back in your car without the utility to do what you need to do is wasted time. And I subscribe to that. I could see why that's been a frustration for Australians for many years, which, let's be fair, Tom, they tried to solve it by putting in more infrastructure like light rails, etc. I think that's going to be turned completely on its head. So regional and rural Australia, striking distance of the CBDs, that's where the hot market is, and that's where you're going to find your execs, and that's where you're going to find your knowledge workers. But they're going to be two big themes for 2022 for me, Tom. And I know a lot of people are putting their money where their mouth is as property investors, looking at those markets where there is good economic infrastructure already existing in some of these large regional towns, rural towns. And by that, I would be talking about places like Mittagong, south of Sydney. I'd be thinking Gosford. I'd be specifically thinking about Wyong, those type of areas which already have good, localized, diversified economies with all the infrastructure there. You can go get a good coffee in these towns, mate. There's small bars there now. There's everything that you would possibly want. And there's a couple of towns running up to Newcastle. You start getting beyond that, you're getting too far out of town, mate. So they're the markets, they're the areas where I think are really going to fire.
Well said. Now, a couple of questions coming in here. What's the difference between real estate sales in Australia versus Europe? So that's come out of left field, that question, but we'll answer it, George. Actually, he's gone off, and my question relates to your overall knowledge to compare between the local market versus the European model. So I'm not going to make a comment, Phil, about the market, how it's going from a price growth perspective, but I will tell you that in terms of the real estate industry model, which may be that you're referring to, George, I've got to tell you, Australia is one of the most sophisticated models in the world, ahead of the USA. I mean, we have a business model here that is highly dependent on marketing. Vendor-paid advertising allows real estate agents to actually do a very broad marketing type campaign, which we don't see even in places like the UK or the USA. In terms of fees, Australia is at the lower end in commissions at around 2% thereabouts when you average it out. Overseas, that number is higher, between 3 and 6%. The other big difference in the model is buyer agents are significantly more important overseas than what they are here, and often the split between a selling agent and a buying agent is 3% and 3%. So often, there's 6% in fees happening. But yeah, that's it. In fact, I can, pretty much tell. I know this from realestate.com. Realestate.com have got businesses in Europe as well. And they just see the Australian business. They've also got, a very big business in the USA. They see Australia, the Australian business, as being a very sophisticated market. Have you got anything to say on that, Phil?
Yeah, I'd agree with much what you said, Tom. When you look at the European market, I think from a philosophical point of view, which is probably not a bad way to frame it, Australians' relationship with property is very different to how other nations view property. If you go to some of the Scandinavian countries, and there I'm talking about Denmark and Sweden and Norway, their political leanings, their sort of more social views, they have a very different relationship with housing. A lot of real estate in Europe. Many people are happy, Tom, in Europe to be generational renters, and there's been generational renters in Europe for a long time. There's a lot of build to rent type institutional money in European markets, and that defines it very differently to what you're seeing in Australia. Now you're starting to see that sort of emerging in Australia right now, but they're very different the way in which they think of and have relationships with real estate, and also from an investment point of view, property investment in Australia. And you see a lot of people come out here and they choose to call Australia home, who sit there and they don't understand, or they don't get initially this concept of negative gearing. They go, well, what's this? And once they get it, they just go, wow, have I just stumbled on the best thing since sliced bread? So, structurally it's very differently here. Philosophically it's very different here. But the call I would make, and this isn't a next year thing, Tom, I think this is more of a decade thing, and maybe in 2031, mate, 10 years time.
You keep going. I've just got to open up a door for a cleaner that's come in.
Yeah, no worries, mate. So big call for me is, Tom, if you can still hear me, for a decade, is that I think you're going to start seeing some structural changes in how real estate is transacted in Australia. And to Tom's point, I think there's going to be a huge emergence of advocates supporting the buyer. And I think there's going to be a big structural shift for Australia. I think the emergence of buyers agents as a professional force to be reckoned with is going to accelerate rapidly over the next decade. I think more and more Australians are going to be using a professional for the purpose of buying property rather than just for the purpose of selling property. And I think a lot of people's experience over the COVID period, frustrations with buying property, missing out on property, is a realization that it is not easy to buy property and buy property well and effectively. And therefore, they're going to be leaning on the buyer's agents moving forward. I see huge growth in that sector. And I think it's going to fundamentally change the way in which real estate, Tom, is transacted. And what I'm saying is that a huge emergence of buyer's agents in the Australian market over the next decade is my call. Structural change to how real estate is transacted, where more and more Australians, Tom, are going to be using the services of a buyer's advocate. And I'm really into this right now. I'm trying to get my head around it, to really forecast blue sky, what that is going to look like. But it will happen, and it will happen quickly. And it's going to become very normalized, Tom, I think, using a buyer's agent, and the best buyers moving forward will be using a buyer's agents. And that's going to change things. The American model for me doesn't work very well, Tom. I don't like the idea of two professionals on either side of the transaction sharing the comms. I think it's conflicted. I think the model that we have here, where the buyer pays the buyer's agent and the vendor pays the commission to the seller's agent, is the best way to go about doing it. It's transparent. And I think that model will work, and will work moving forward. I cannot see commission splits here in Australia from the buyer, between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. That's a big prediction for me for the next decade. But I don't know the number yet. No one knows the number, how many properties are transacted, Tom, in Australia with a buyer's agent. But you move out 10 years, I'm calling 10 to 20%.
Okay. What about this question here? View of building to rent developments, especially in Adelaide. Well, Phil, here's the deal. With developments, all I'll say, well, firstly, let me just touch on the Adelaide market. I'm speaking at Phil Harris's conference next year, who sells a lot of real estate, actually sells more real estate than any other individual office in Australia. And the theme of that conference is from nuts to normal. That marketplace has normalised. So I think, Jim, whatever you're doing your forecasts on resales as a developer, I can tell you it would be intelligent in your forecast to actually deduct a small percentage with the view that you might not be able to achieve the prices that have been achieved at the moment. I think that's a smart. You should always, underestimate resales as a developer, regardless. But more so now as we move from a nuts to normal market. What do I think about developments? Well, Phil, the average developer has always been looking at getting a return of investment of around 25%. Right? That's what they when they buy the site, and then they estimate what it's going to cost to build, and then they factor holding charges. What they're hoping to do is come out of it with roughly 25%. In some marketplaces where you've got smaller developments, where families are basically buying work for their family and their staff. So what actually happens is you're competing with people that are saying, hey, we don't care about that margin. We need to take a project because we've got to keep our people working. We don't want them to leave. We've got to keep providing work for them. So in those instances, you find that often, your return of investment can go down as low as 15%. All I say is, Jim, before you jump in, I'm assuming you've done a few developments because you don't know what you don't know in the world of development. Phil, over to you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you'll be the best developer around, and every single developer I know and I've seen at some point in time, they nearly go to the wall, or they go to the wall. You see people think they've got the magic touch and they just do one after another and after another. They get bigger and bigger and bigger, and debt levels increase, the size and scale and scope of the build increases. And at some point in time, it unravels. And what typically unravels is either misinformed projections around the projects. Some of that you can mitigate, but the big factor is economic conditions and other conditions that you have no control over is typically what brings most developers undone. It is a specialized profession. It's a specialized set of skills, and in many ways it's an art form. So you need to be happy with and prepared for a level of risk and uncertainty. Now, if you're a developer and you purchased a block back in 2017, you did all the things that you needed to do, you broke ground in 2019 to start building, and you started building, you've been able to build through that COVID period with all the restrictions, access to work, increasing costs. That through that COVID period, building costs increased by 20%, Tom. How many people had that sort of stuff factored in? However, but if you completed in June of this year and you were able to sell those properties at an absolute premium at the top of the market, you've probably done all right. What does the future look like? What's the economy look like? Now, economy is bouncing back pretty strongly after a COVID, and this is in Adelaide and also Australia-wide. This is the sort of macro factors. Unemployment's going to be probably at an all-time low by the middle or to the end of next year. Who knows who's going to be in government next period of time, what they would do in terms of changing policy or legislation towards this. And all the big banks, Tom, are predicting subdued growth over 2022 and negative growth in 2023. So if you start developing now in Adelaide in 2023 and market's going backwards, are you going to get a return on your investment? This is the big dice that you roll in developing property. And to Adelaide, it depends what sort of developments you're doing. Is it sort of housing? Is it sort of, greenfield sites where you're putting in, new house and land accommodation, or you're putting up high rises? Who's going to be living this stuff? It's a minefield, mate. It is an absolute minefield.
Do you think the return of international travel will have a big impact on the lifestyle? Do you think the return of it will have a big lifestyle on lifestyle property markets? I think to the Facebook user that's posed that question there, yes, if it's a marketplace that international people have previously had as a destination, I think that stands to reason. If international travel means that you can start, example Byron Bay. Like if we know that you've got overseas people love going back to Byron, 100%. um, there. But this whole return of international travel, Phil, I still haven't got my mind across it. Um,
Yeah, it's a tough one, mate. I'd probably read this question in the reverse, Tom, as in when Australians are allowed to travel again and have holidays overseas, Fiji or Aspen or does that mean the demand on lifestyle markets here in Australia, which have been buoyed or accelerated by Australians staying local, is where the impact's going to be, i.e., are less people going to be travelling to Byron Bay because they can go to Bali moving forward? And I think there will be some impact, but I personally believe also there's been a real recalibration of Australia's view towards Australia. I think there's this realisation that you don't need to leave Australia to get the best beaches in the world. You do not need to leave Australia to get some of the best country in the world. Yes, culturally it's a bit different, and you might not have, some of the smells and the sights of Bangkok or otherwise. But I think a lot of Australians are now a lot happy to call Australia home, and they want to spend more time in home. So chasing international travel and the dreams of, I think, will be maybe a little bit more subdued to what it was. But I think also people are a lot more risk averse now and can see how quickly things can change, and concerns about how other countries are navigating the COVID pandemic. We see our friends and family in the UK now looking down the eyeball of a lockdown over the Christmas period. Who knows what's going to happen, mate? So I can't see a flood of people back to where it was pre-pandemic jumping on planes to go traveling. I think they're still going to be traveling within Australia, and that should help those lifestyle markets, is my read of that question.
Yeah, well, listen, I've been going to Byron Bay for 25 years, and what I noticed over the last 2 years, Phil, was the crowd that would normally go to Bali ended up going to Byron because they couldn't go to surface, and the crowd that was going to surface couldn't get through the Queensland border, so they started going to Byron. So 100%, I can see, the border opening. Hey, we will go to the surface. I mean, they want to, I was seeing kids with little kids there. They wanted to be at theme parks, but they were in Byron, right? So that 100%. But I agree with you, Phil. I actually think what's happened is regional Australia has become very, very attractive, and people that may have been going to Phuket, may have been going to Bali, may have been going to Hawaii are beginning to say, hang on a second, there's some nice places around Australia that you sort of became aware of during the lockdown period, and then you couple it with the average person would probably rather get sick in Australia than sick overseas. You factor that in.
I know people who have cancelled holidays to Fiji on doctors' sort of recommendations, going, if you get sick in a place like Fiji or country X or Y or Z that doesn't have the healthcare system that we have here, that's not a good spot to be. And don't think your travel insurance are going to be putting you on a private jet back to get you back in Australia and that sort of stuff. Like, if you get sick in a third world country with COVID-19, you're going to have to deal with it in said third world country, and that is your choice. So I think a lot of people are going to be cautious of travel until there is some normalization of this COVID pandemic, and that may be a couple of years away, Tom. So for lifestyle markets,
Phil, and I was talking to Dr. Fred Gross, about he's a coach and educator and trainer in the real estate industry, and I was talking to him this morning, and he said to me, he goes, I'm not sure whether I'll do that because I don't want to risk the quarantine rules. So quarantining is a big thing on people's heads. People are trying to reduce the probability of quarantine either way, whether they land. I was talking to another, American speaker that, we're looking at having at ARIC. First thing he said is, as of this moment, can you tell me what the quarantine rules are there? So quarantining is another issue with international people in making the decisions. I've got a question here from Desmond. I've been struggling to sell my house in Melbourne. It's been listed for the last 3 months. Is the market slowing down? Well, it has slowed down, Desmond, in the last month. The 2 months previously, it was pretty strong and robust. But, there's only two reasons, Phil, why properties don't sell. It's either the agent has done a poor job at getting the property out into the marketplace, so it basically means poor marketing, Or, Desmond, I don't know. You might be overpriced. There's another reason why properties don't sell. The owners want more than what the market is saying. So I'd suggest that you speak to your real estate agent and say to them, hey, listen, I'm sick and tired of waiting for 3 months. What has to happen for it to get sold today? What do we need to do in the marketing and what do we need to do in the price? And if you're not comfortable with the answers that they're giving to you, I suggest that you're up for 3 months. It says to me that your agency is probably expiring. Your agreement, the agency agreement, is probably expiring. So I would suggest, you look at that.
Yeah, mate, I agree with that, and I'm going through something myself right at the moment, trying to sell a property up in the Central Coast of New South Wales, and we probably missed our window by 2 weeks getting this property up. We sold it, listed it 2 weeks earlier than what we did. It would have flown off the shelf. It's not, to your point, Tom. You always say A-grade properties sell and sell quickly. Usually all of the time. This is not an A-grade property. It's got issues that prior to this or this stock currently on the market, most people would have overlooked because there wasn't a lot of stock on market. But now they're concerns. It's on a main road. It could do with a bit of a haircut and a shave. And my agent has sort of said, hey, a couple of people are coming through. Nothing really positive in terms of offers. I went back to him, Tom. I said, look, it's not going to sell. Let's just get it back up. It's an investment property listed for rentals. And he come back saying, look, fully renovated homes are getting top pricing, but the normal run-of-the-mill ones are cooling off. The majority of people are not wanting to do full renos, which is reflecting on the price. He's saying he's getting enormous amounts of inquiries, but hard to actually get deals on it. Rental demand's high, so if I wanted to relist it, it would be okay. He said, look, just reprice it, sort of 50 grand off where we thought it was going to be. And I just wrote back, as your call, let's get it sold. So it's happening everywhere. It's just Melbourne.
Bill, my advice to you is there's a golden line in real estate. When you adjust the price, the magical buyer always appears. It just happens. You do a price adjustment, then out of nowhere comes this buyer, says, yep, I want it, and they pay full price. So price seems to affect a lot of things, and this is a very useful topic to be talking about right now, because I actually think real estate agents that are really good at pricing and helping vendors accept the reality of the marketplace are probably going to do really, really well in 2022, because I actually see that there's going to be decent stock levels. We're not going to have, we don't expect to have the lockdowns that we've had previously, so there should be a free run of stock happening on a consistent basis. And we're just going back to a normal market. Vendor here, buyer here. Good agents sort of do their work. If you're good at doing that work, you should make a handsome living in 2022.
It's good.
Yeah.
And mate, I'm happy. Look, I've already made the mental decision to sell the property. So if it's $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 less than what we thought we could have got 2 months ago, mate, I'm happy to wear it.
I've got to say, it's an interesting comment you've just made there. I've made the decision to sell the property. This month, Phil, I'll do 150 auctions, right? And it's a short month, because there's one we miss out on the last week. This is the question I ask every vendor before I start their auction. Mr. Vendor, Mrs. Vendor, I just want to ask you, have you made the decision that you definitely want to sell, right? I don't even go in there, because as far as I'm concerned, if we can get to these people want to move on, right? In most instances, we have got buyers, Phil. We have got buyers. So then the decision is, do you want to meet what the market is saying, right? If you want to sell, do you want to meet? Don't get caught up with this, and if they'll start off and they'll say, oh, no, we'll wait till March when the market picks up, and then what are you going to do? Oh, then we're going to go off and buy something else. Well, you're going to be in exactly the same situation, You're buying and selling in the same market. All I want to fundamentally is, do people want to move on with their life, with whatever the reason, whatever your reason that you're selling that property is for, right? And you've said you do. So that agent there now knows that he will get you market value, and you will then make the decision. Hey, yes, let's sell it, right? Um, Phil, what's been your? We'll finish off here. What's been your highlight of 2021, mate? What's the one thing that you look back off and you say, man, this was great.
Other than real estate exposed with Tom Panos?
Yeah. The second most important thing.
Second most important. Well, to that point, reigniting doing this, mate, I really enjoyed that, and thanks for your time, energy, and effort working through what has been a pretty topsy-turvy back end of the year. But I guess highlight for me on a professional level, not on a personal level. I'll talk professionally. I think it's around our organisation's commitment to and process towards ensuring continuity on everything that we do. And it sort of touches to what we spoke about earlier. Despite everything that's sort of thrown up at you or at us as an organisation, and we're a very, very big events company. And for at least 6 months of this year, sort of at the start of the year and during that lockdown period, we weren't able to do a big part of our business. So, the biggest thing I'm probably most satisfied with is the team's collective attitude towards ensuring we're going to get everything done that we said that we would get done, and then what our communities and markets expect from us to get done. And, we've scored really high in that regards. We've delivered every single event that we set out at the start of 2021 to do. We've done it, bar one, which was a big trip to New York, which we couldn't do, but everything domestically, mate, we've got it done. And that lends itself to the attitude of everyone to get it done, but then more so towards the execution of doing that, planning and maneuvering in what has been a very fluid and uncertain environment. And I think the team here, it's been a tough year, but I think by and large, everyone would acknowledge that they have learned and grown substantially through that whole journey, and are therefore much better off as a result of it. And I'd put myself into that bucket as well. So not necessarily easy, but we made the right decisions with the information that we had at the time to ensure we can get the job done. And we've pretty much done that. So to me, that's the highlight, mate. You?
Alrighty. Oh, listen. This was our second lockdown. I think second lockdown, I think, handled better than the first one. First one, I didn't think we handled it badly. But I feel for me, look, Maddie finished her HSC with all the disruption and ended up being, even though she hasn't got her results, she's already accepted what she wants to do, and she's really happy with what she's been offered to do. Another year of a clean bill of health. Unless something's been taken away from you, you probably won't spend a lot of time and energy focusing on it because you haven't missed it. But I've had times in my life where I've craved for good health, so I do value that. The fact that I feel that I'm pretty excited about. I think that every year I go into the approach that the future is going to be bigger than the past. I think you can be 70 years of age and still have that belief, right? That the future is going to be better than the past. It's a view that you have in life. It's a view that you have. It's a personal philosophy that you think the future is going to be better than what you've done, and that you have an expectancy that good things are going to happen. And it's been a good year. Health, family, business has been good. I'd be over the moon if I was sitting with you this time next year, which hopefully we are. And I basically said to you, man, it was a mirror image of the year before. I would be very, very happy, So, yeah. Anyway, Phil, it's a pity. Yeah, it's a pity that we didn't get together. It was I had a slight cold, and the right thing to do is to have less physical contact when that happens. I've got a COVID test. It wasn't COVID, but regardless. I don't want to give you a cold anyway, Phil. So thank you so much, Phil. I'll see you next year. It's been an absolute pleasure, by the way, Phil, because I feel like, I'm having lunch with you every, well, today's a Wednesday, but every Thursday I feel like, it's my lunch date with Phil.
There you go. Well, let's look forward to more of it in 2022, mate. And have a good New Year's, mate. And Chrissy, I'll see you soon. See ya.